My eyelids felt as if someone had threaded tiny anchors into each of my eyelashes, impossibly heavy and unwilling to move. I imagined that I would be tearing skin as I peeled them open to blink for the first time in what felt like days. I licked my lips and noticed how dry they were, and I realized that I felt parched. I dragged in a deep breath, and I slowly opened my eyes. With a slight grunt, I hauled myself into a sitting position and winced. Ouch. Okay, that was a mistake, because everything ached. I grimaced and I glanced around the room. There was a miniature lamp on the dresser which helped illuminate my side of the small room. There was an oak desk across from the twin-sized linen sheet bed I was tucked in. Next to that stood a large walk-in closet built into the wall and a restroom near the door. I glanced down and noticed that my clothes were replaced with a plain gray tank top and sweatpants. I subconsciously reached for my phone to check the time, but it wasn't on the nightstand. What sat there, however, was a black pitcher, a ceramic cup, and my wallet. Careful of the slight weakness in my arms, I poured myself a drink. I licked my dry lips and sent a thanks to no one in particular as I drank the water down like it was lifeblood. I suddenly winced again when I moved my leg. Curious, I tentatively removed the thin blanket and rolled up my pant leg, revealing a bandage wrapped tightly around my calf. I took in a few shaky breaths as the recollection of that night doused my veins in ice water. I placed my head in my hands to try and calm the spiral of emotions as tears threatened to spill down my cheeks. I heard a knock and the door opened. I sniffed and rubbed my eyes.
"Oh, you're awake,"
said a female voice.
"Roland will be relieved. He's been freaking out over you since he brought you here, all bloody and unconscious."
I turned around to the source of the voice. A petite young woman with curly, shoulder-length brown hair, tanned skin, and gray eyes stood in the doorway. She wore black scrubs and a gray mask, carrying a steaming cup in her hands. She closed the door and walked over to me.
"Roland? Wait, he's alive? He's here?"
A huge wave of relief washed over me, knowing that my best friend was all right.
"Do you know where he is now? I need to see him."
Ignoring the pain, I moved to push the rest of the sheets away from me, and that's when she held out her free hand towards me.
"Whoa, hold on. I don't know where he is right now, but I'm here to check on you and make sure you drank your medicine when you woke up,"
she quickly explained as she motioned to the pitcher.
"But hey, since you already did, I guess that makes it easier for all of us. Well done, you."
I blinked and glanced nervously at the pitcher beside me. I hadn't even realized that it had been anything but water.
"You should probably eat," she added. "You haven't eaten anything for 3 days."
That made sense. Now that I was awake, I could feel a painful gnawing sensation in my stomach. It was a clawing hunger more intense than anything I'd felt before. But then again, I've never fasted for 3 days either. You don't happen to have any horses around here, do you?" I asked sheepishly. She shook her head and grinned.
"No, sorry, but if you drink this,"
she offered me the mug,
"your hunger will go away."
I decided quickly that being drugged at this point wouldn't make much of a difference, and if Roland trusted her, then I would too. I did as I was told and took the mug from her. It was filled with a thick, dark liquid. I crinkled my nose. The substance smelled of herbs, spices, and something rich that I couldn't place. I took a sip. Wow, that's actually really good. What is it?
"One of the doctor's famous recipes, and they work wonders," she said. "Well, I better go. Make sure to let Roland know you're awake when he gets back."
After she left, I placed the mug on the nightstand and slid delicately to the side of the bed, being mindful of my bandaged leg. I flinched when my bare feet had made contact with the floor. I walked stiffly into the restroom. It was clean and depersonalized. There was a small bottle of aspirin and a box of white bandages close together in the cabinet above the sanitized porcelain sink. Rust marks tackled the metal shelves that showed where other things had been not long ago. I looked into the mirror, expecting to see my face busted up. When I turned my head, however, the area where that demon had scratched me was almost completely gone. The skin was still a little tender and pink. How the hell was that even possible? I received a pretty nasty cut to my face. I'm not going to complain, but the last time I checked, I didn't have any special healing powers. The sound of footsteps broke me out of my thoughts. I was just leaving the restroom when the door opened. Roland rounded the doorway with his hand against the frame. The other was holding a bundle of clothes. He looked exhausted. I've never seen him like that before. I felt a pang of guilt run up my spine. I truly believed that I was protecting the ones I loved by keeping my ability a secret. But I was wrong. People died that night. Roland could have died that night. Before he could open his mouth, I pulled him into a hug. My whole body began to shake as I sobbed.
I'm so sorry, Roland.
Roland hugged me close.
Hey, it's all right. You're safe now. There's no need to apologize, Gav.
I let him comfort me for a minute before we both broke apart.
How did I get here?
I brought you here,
he answered simply.
Wait, but how? There was a something animal in there with me. So how did you manage to survive?
Roland gave me an apprehensive look.
That was me, Gav,
he said, gently.
I'm a werewolf.
I don't... What?
I said, perplexed as I struggled to really understand what Roland had just told me. But I would have known, right? All these years that I've known him, I would have seen some sort of sign, and it wasn't like I was ignorant of the real world and what was really out there. I knew demons existed, so maybe something like werewolves weren't too far-fetched, but knowing one personally felt so surreal.
I'm telling you the truth, he said.
Why would you lie about something like that? I asked. I immediately felt like a hypocrite as soon as the accusation left my lips. I was upset at Roland for keeping a secret from me when that's exactly what I had been doing. My not-so-righteous indignation drained out of me, and I walked over to the edge of the bed and sat down. Roland took a moment before he came over. He placed the clothes on the table and sat down beside me.
I didn't actually lie to you,
he refutes, slowly.
I just omitted certain parts of the truth.
Those are some huge omissions, Roland, I said.
All right, but I swear to you that nothing was an out-and-out lie.
He noticed the wary look on my face and sighed.
Please, Gavin, don't be afraid of me. I'd never hurt you.
Then he glanced down at my calf.
I swear that was an accident. I thought the demon was still out there and I panicked.
I held up a hand. I believe you. I'm just trying to process all of this. Why didn't you tell me?
I'm bound by Lycan's laws, he explained. Also, you deserve to know because of what happened that night.
Makes sense, I guess. So, where am I? I asked.
You're in a hospital.
Really? It doesn't look like any normal hospital I've seen.
Because it isn't. This place is an institution that provides medical treatment for sick or injured, supernatural beings like me. You know how my mom's a nurse?
Yeah, she works here, and sometimes I volunteer once in a while, he stated.
We even have transportation and daycare, among other things.
Are you serious? I asked. That's pretty cool, but then why am I here? I'm human.
Before Roland could answer, my stupid leg bumped against the nightstand, eliciting a curse from me. I can heal that, Roland said. He jerked his chin towards my bandaged calf. Your injury. I can heal that.
How? I asked.
Just relax, Roland said, gently. He rolled up his sleeve and carefully lifted my leg and placed it over his lap. He rolled up his left sleeve and reached into his pocket and took out a small knife.
Whoa, hold on, what are you doing?
I panicked as I tried to pull away, but his grip was strong, very strong. He glanced over at me as he removed the bandage. I grimaced as I saw the 3 large claw marks. Relax, Gavin, he repeated. After I calmed down, he took the blade and sliced his palm open. Blood pooled and dripped from the wound. He carefully wrapped his hand on my leg. Then I felt it. A strange, warm sensation spread around the area. My first reaction was to grab my leg and hiss, but I fought to keep myself still. You okay? Roland asked.
You just sliced your hand open and placed it on my leg like some weird blood oath, but yeah, it doesn't hurt, at least, I said. A feeling like having my leg wake up from falling asleep spread slowly across it, like pins and needles, as the skin beneath his hand closed. The sensation eased and then disappeared completely.
What was that? I gaped at him. It's called pain transference, he explained as he released my leg. We, werewolves, have the ability to absorb the pain of others, and even heal them by sharing bodily fluids like saliva or blood. Pretty neat, huh?
Yeah. Hold on, I'm not a werewolf now, right?
Roland chuckled and shook his head. No, that's not how it works. Humans turning are very rare.
Did it hurt at all? You know, when
I healed you? He leaned back slightly. Sometimes, but it really depends on the severity of the injury.
I'm guessing you've worked with worse, huh?
I asked. Yeah, I have. And I'd happily do it again, he said.
You're a masochist, I scoffed.
Roland laughed, and I felt a smile begin to tug at the edge of my lips, but then disappeared as the reality of what had happened came back to me.
What happened to their bodies?
I asked, slowly. Roland sighed and took a few moments before he spoke. What he told me was a lot, so the short explanation was this. After what had transpired, he was able to get a hold of his father. Whomever his father had called, they had taken care of it. He didn't go into much detail, but whatever these people did, they were able to make it look like a car accident. Even though lying to their families didn't really sit right with me, I was relieved that the bodies of Jasper and Shelby were found, and their families will be able to give them proper burials. I asked about Arian, the real Arian, but he just told me that her body was never found, as far as he knew. That must all be so much to take in. I bet you feel like everything's going to hell in a handbasket, he said. I looked away from him. To a normal person, it'd seem that way, but I've been dealing with it since I was a child. What do you mean? Roland cocked his head. I've been able to sense demons ever since my parents' death, but now, for some reason, it's getting harder to control. That night, the demon said that it needed to take me alive, but I don't know why. Jesus, Gav, I didn't know,
he said. No one did. I mean, who would have believed me?
I believe you, Roland said, as he patted my shoulder. So does my father. That reminds me, after you're dressed, he wants to see you. My eyes widened.
Elijah?
Roland nodded. Yeah, he's the pack leader.
Of course he was.
Who else but Roland's imposing father would be the alpha werewolf?
Roland and I left after hours. Part of me was curious as to what kinds of supernatural creatures they had for patients, but Roland decided that we go out the back door. After an hour, we pulled up to the edge of the property line. Before we continued down the road, Roland turns to face me.
All right, Gavin. I need you to listen to me very carefully.
Yeah, sure, I said, warily.
Whatever you see, just don't panic. They won't harm you, he said. They're like me, and they are a pack.
I won't, I said. I doubted that convinced him, since I didn't even convince myself. I briefly wondered if the wolfy senses could detect dishonesty, but I didn't ask.
Are you sure?
He asked, skeptically.
You look a little shaken. Look, if it'll make you feel any better, don't look out the windows.
He smirked as he began to drive down the road. Curiosity got the better of me, and what I saw made me regret it. Several pairs of amber eyes watched us as we made our way down the road. I quickly averted my eyes. Street lamps lined the road as we drove deeper into the woods. The beasts that were lurking in the trees vanished, but the feeling of being watched stayed. There were a few cabins that I could see scattered throughout the trees, and dirt paths trailed between them. They were spread out, and some of them looked well lived in, with small gardens filled with a variety of little trinkets. We pulled up in front of a massive lodge overlooking the lake. Even though I've known Roland and his parents for years, never once had I visited this place. His parents were like family to me, and now that I think about it, I kind of felt a bit hurt that the ones I trusted didn't seem to trust me with this until now. But I also understood that they had their reasons. I kept close to him as we made our way up the steps. The doors to the lodge were heavy oak carved with beautiful forest patterns. Roland grabbed his keys and unlocked the doors. The doors opened up into a large room with a high ceiling. A chandelier made out of deer antlers hung down in the center. Comfortable-looking chairs and cushions sat about a wide circular table in the center of the room. There were also leather couches in front of a marble fireplace mounted into the wall. The floor was some sort of shiny stone, maybe granite. There was a staircase leading up to the second floor. The whole place seemed well lived in.
This is where my father holds pack meetings. The hallway through the doors to the left is the kitchen, and upstairs is where my family sleeps. That's 20 of us in my father's pack, and some actually live here, he explained.
I was about to say something when someone entered in from the kitchen. The guy looked to be our age, with shoulder-length, dirty blonde hair, pale skin, and green eyes that were narrowed in my direction. He crossed his arms over his chest.
Emery,
Roland said, as he moved closer to me.
Do you know where my father— You should have called, Roland.
The guy, Emery, scowled. Roland sighed, clearly annoyed.
I already informed my father. One of the demons had some ability to cut service to our cell phones. There wasn't enough time to come up with a plan.
Emery took a few steps forward and jerked his chin in my direction.
Yet you expose yourself to a human? You of all werekin know better.
Roland suddenly bared his teeth at Emery, and I could have sworn that his eyes turned an amber color.
I told you I had no other choice, he growled.
Emery's eyes also seemed to bleed amber, but he took a step back.
For some reason, they were after him and were ordered to bring him back alive. My father wants to know why. You've got to be joking, right? Emery scoffed. What the hell would demons want with a human kid? And a weak-looking one at that? I felt a prickle of annoyance at this guy's insult.
I'm 21, actually, I said, calmly. And don't insult me again. If you haven't figured it out, I've had a really bad couple of days.
Is that a threat? Emery growled. Back off, Em, Roland warns with a growl of his own. He managed to wound one of them, and he fought to stay alive long enough for me to get to him.
No.
Emmy's face tightened. You're the one. Enough. A booming voice filled the room, dripping with authority. The three of us paused, and Roland and I turned around. Elijah and his wife, Natalie, eyed us from the entryway. Natalie was tall and slender, but was still inches shorter than Roland. Her ember hair spun in ringlets past her pale skin. Her hazel eyes relaxed as they settled on mine. Elijah was a tall, muscular, dark-skinned man with short black hair speckled with gray. His dark brown eyes narrowed. Even though Elijah's physique was imposing, he was a really cool guy. I guess as the alpha, he had to be fierce, stern, and at times deadly. The realization that Roland, my best friend, was a werewolf brought a definite undercurrent of excitement. The heart-stopping terror that happened a few nights ago faded into interest, into thrilling newness, like playing a new game for the first time or unlocking an achievement. Only better, because this was real. Also scarier, because this was real. Elijah cleared his throat. I'm going to talk with Gavin. I'm going to talk with Gavin, he said. Alone, he added firmly when Roland began to follow. Emery left first, not even giving me a second glance. Natalie gave me a quick hug.
Oh my goodness. I'm so relieved that you're all right. Roland, sweetie, I'll need your help with something in the shed, she said as she headed towards the kitchen. Roland gave me a reassuring smile and followed his mother.
Come and sit down, Gavin, Elijah invited.
I still felt slightly irritated after everything that just happened to me. Being angry was easier than being upset, but Elijah didn't deserve either from me. I sat down on the couch near the fireplace. A lump formed in my throat, and I placed my head in my hands.
I'm sorry, I apologized. I didn't mean to cause any inconvenience or...
Elijah sat down next to me and placed a hand on my shoulder.
I don't blame you, son. You've been through a hell of a lot, he stated calmly. Is there anything I can get you? Something to drink?
I smiled weakly and shook my head.
No, I'm fine, thank you. I just don't know what I'm gonna do now.
Elijah leaned forward and clasped his hands together. Well, perhaps you could tell me what happened. The demons that you and Roland dealt with. Was that the first time you've encountered or seen a demon?
Encountered like that? Yes. But I've been aware of their presence ever since I was a child.
Elijah asked me to elaborate. He listened very carefully as I spilled the beans, and he never took his eyes off mine. Elijah's brows knitted together. I know that this next question may be personal, but I need you to answer it if you can. I nodded. Did anyone in your family have this ability? Your mother or father, perhaps?
No, not that I could remember. My whole family were completely normal, I answered.
Are you sure? A little voice whispered in my head.
You were only a child when your parents died. You were barely old enough to know anything about them.
Elijah pursed his lips. Normal people. Well, you were very young when your parents died, so it is likely one of them could have passed this ability to you. However, this is all just speculation on my part.
I slumped back against the sofa. He continued.
Humans in general are below a demon's notice, usually, unless they're in need of a vessel.
Or maybe it's because of what I can do, and they don't like that, I added. Elijah patted me on the shoulder again and stood up.
That's definitely a possibility.
Do you think it's safe for me to go home? I asked.
Elijah shook his head, concerned. No. At least not until I have someone go over and check the house. We have a guest room available for you.
Even though Elijah used to own the house, I wasn't at all sure I wanted someone I didn't know in our home, but there was no reason for me to not trust him. I was just being paranoid. Surprisingly, the last question that came out was, "Why did you allow Roland and I to become friends? I mean, weren't you worried that I'd find out the truth about you?"
There were a few in the pack who believed it wasn't a wise choice. But if some of us are to live among humans, we can't shut ourselves off from them entirely. We even have a method of concealing ourselves, he said. Now, I'll have someone take you to your room. Tomorrow I shall do what I can to find out why demons have taken such an interest in you.
I nodded. I wanted answers. At least this was a place to start.